They have everything to do with the highest court in the land, that is the Supreme Court. That is where some petitions have been filed against, the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta on October 26th. It's some sort of a deja vu moment because it also happened after the August 8th election. And on their splash, they've clearly indicated that hidden cards in court poll battle ahead of the D-Day. And they're saying this time around the petition is focusing on details of election conduct and scrutiny of forms. Lawyers of President Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga and IIBC to file responses by 5 p.m. And other parties, who are interested in this case, they are also going to request to join in the petition. So, Dismas, let me begin with you. There are those who are saying, of course, NASA has not filed this petition. There are people who've done that on their individual capacity. But the political analysts, observers were saying that NASA might have a hand in these petitions.
Well, it would be naive for anybody to imagine that NASA does not have a hand in these petitions. Mm-hmm. And you must not have somebody from NASA doing these petitions for you to confirm that actually it's NASA. All these people who are doing it could be proxies working in close consultation with NASA. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, the matter by Njojo Mue or Khalifa Mohammed from Mombasa. They may not be a direct link, but they must be. If you look at the backstory, there must be a connection. That would be the first level. Then the second level, they may apply to be enjoined in the matter as interested parties. Again, not necessarily representing NASA, but achieving the NASA objectives. Mm-hmm. So it would be very interesting to see how the cases go out. Mm-hmm. But what really stands out in this case, what the petitions are arguing, is about the use of biometrics, because they claim that during the last election, there were about 30,000 voters who did not have the biometrics in place.
Yes.
And then a miracle has happened in the process. 60 days later, you've got about 1.6 million people who voted without having used the biometrics, that they had to use their fingerprints. So the question people are beginning to ask, how come you've got these 1.6 million people who 60 days ago, they were able to do their normal voting, but this time around, probably they've had the opportunity to go maybe to a mine somewhere, a quarry, where their fingerprints have been compromised, and now they have to use an alternative mean of voting. So that would be a big issue.
I'm sure these are some of the things the petitioners have already highlighted on. Yeah. We expect the judges to act on it. Now, Mutinda, from Dismas' observation there, he's saying that, it will be naive to think that NASA doesn't have a hand in this. And some of these people who filed the petition are members of the civil society. You've seen, these people have been at loggerheads with the NGO board and to some extent the government. So where will this put them?
I want to concur with him that as much as NASA officially has not enjoined itself or has not filed the petition.
Actually, they've officially distanced themselves from the petition.
Yes, but I want to agree with the sentiments that it would be naive for anyone to imagine that they have got no interest or even more clearly an hidden hand behind what is happening. And you've seen there are several petitions that have gone to court. And of course, they are very much interested in what the outcome would be. Because as for the relationship between the government and the NGOs, that is going to be handled as per case basis. Because that will depend on what are the issues being raised as per each NGO. And I don't think that necessarily has anything to do with the court cases. Because these are separate things, that there is the regulatory regime for NGOs that has got a right to ensure that the law is complied.
But there are people out there who might think, that these civil societies are siding with NASA. I thought they're supposed to be neutral. Is that the case? Are they supposed to be neutral in the first place?
Yeah, they're supposed to be neutral. They are supposed to be neutral. But you see, sometimes neutrality is something that is not very easily attained when we have such polarized positions like is the current case.
Yes.
But of course, ideally, they should be very neutral. But we know that in practice, and actually NRM has made it very clear that it is no longer NASA. It is now NRM, and NRM is bringing a broad-based coalition, including the civil society. Now that already again questions whether are they really as neutral as they would want us to believe, or they are also partisan in regard to that. Because I remember very well when they were talking about moving from NASA to NRM, they were saying it's now, because it's now no longer just about the political players, but they want to make a very broad-based coalition to bring in other stakeholders outside the traditional political players. And they were very clear that that would include the civil society organizations. So I am not very sure about them being very neutral, but I am sure that NASA has an interest in whatever is happening in court, as much as they do not want to show an open hand in the matter.
Hezbon, before I come to you, let's allow Hezbon to get into the discussion. Now, Hezbon, Dismas has already said, there's some kind of relationship between these petitions with NASA. Of course, NASA have come out clearly saying that, they don't have any interest with this petition. They're going to fund their own People's Assembly, and, the list is endless. So, do you think NASA has some relationship with this petition? Let's begin from there.
Well, if you look at our political dispensation, it's a bit clear that we have two sides of the political divide. And they're very strong, so much so that there is no third force. And therefore, any organization that takes a position, and of course we know, if you don't stand for anything, you stand for nothing at all. So any organization that takes a position on issues will definitely be taking a position that may not be, in line with either side of the political divide, and of course support one side of the political divide. And I want to look at it that way, that these individuals and organizations have taken a position that the election that we had on the 26th of October was not valid, and therefore they are going to court to challenge, because it's only the Supreme Court that can do that. So to the extent that they've taken a position, and the position seems to be leaning towards NASA, there is that perception, that they are working on the behest of NASA. But the fact that NASA has distanced itself, I want to believe that Kenyans should look at this from a very objective point of view, that these are just Kenyans who are looking at the electoral process, and they believe in the rule of law, and they have a strong feeling that the election as it was conducted on the 26th did not conform to the rule of law.
Yes. This was